The year was 2004, and it was the first time I'd seen Emma and Tom's juices on the shelf at my local cafe. Immediately I was hooked. Finally, there was a cool-looking juice brand in a cool-looking bottle with interesting flavours, no funky additives, plus it was named after two anonymous people. Who the hell was Emma and Tom? It's taken me 18 years to find that out, but it was worth the wait. Yeah, sure, I could have Googled it, I know. But I waited until I met him. Let's go and meet Tom Griffith in a very juicy episode 591 of the 12-year-old award-winning Small Business Big Marketing podcast.
Well, I said, welcome to a small business marketing show where successful small business owners share their souls to take your marketing straight to the lead. Now, here's your host, Mr. Tim Reid.
And welcome back to your weekly dose of pithy marketing. Thank you very much. I'm your host, Timbo Reid, and I have an insatiable curiosity for uncovering marketing strategies and ideas that help businesses just like yours to grow. How do I do that? By having in-depth conversations with successful business founders from around this crazy world. You, infinitely more importantly, are a motivated business owner, and you're ready to crank out some great marketing to build that beautiful, beautiful, beautiful business of yours into the empire that it absolutely deserves to be. And that, my friend, is exactly why this show exists. So well done to you for finding it. Be sure to subscribe to it too if you really love it. As per usual, team, there is marketing GOLD dripping from the ceiling over here at Small Business Big Marketing's HQ. So let's get stuck right in. Quick update. Last week, I think I said I was coming down with COVID, or at least a very bad version of the man flu. It turned out to be COVID. Well, we're all going to get it, I guess. And it wasn't as bad as I thought. Laid me out for a few days, put my feet up, took my time, more so than usual. But I'm on the tail end of it and feeling a little bit more sprightly. If you've had it, I wish you all the luck in your recovery. Or if you got it, I wish you all the luck in your recovery. For those who haven't got it, I guess it's ahead. I don't know. Everything's just gone mad, hasn't it? Hey, getting some great voicemails from you, my precious listener. I appreciate it so much. Some of you I know don't make it to the very end of episodes when I do play voicemails. So just a reminder, give the Small Business Big Marketing hotline a call on 0480 015 150. Put that in your phone. And if you're ever feeling up to it, give us a buzz. I'm not going to answer the phone. It'll be a voicemail, but you've got 5 minutes to leave me a message about what marketing's working for you, what you think of the show, what I could be doing better, whatever you want to tell me. Include your website address and business name because I might just play it on an upcoming episode. Following successful corporate careers in both Melbourne and London, in 2004, Tom Griffith, with business partner Emma, used their combined savings to fulfill a dream of creating a premium Australian juice brand. Emma and Tom's Juices was born and in the years since has grown to be one of Australia's leading healthy drinks and snack businesses, selling a range of all-natural, minimally processed whole fruit juices, quenches, sparkling juices, iced teas, no added sugar-flavoured milks and snack bars through more than 6,000 Australian outlets, as well as to the major grocery retailers in Coles, Woolworths and IGA. You can also find them overseas, in China, Jordan, Dubai, Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia. This is such a great story of, just like a spark of an idea. And now it's global. I know that's how everything happens, but it's just so lovely when you meet the people behind those ideas who have made it happen. And that's what we're about to do with Tom Griffiths, who shares how he and Emma escaped their corporate cubicles to start what became Australia's most loved premium juice brand, how they got marketing traction in those really important early days, how to create an emotional connection with your customers, aka a brand. No matter what you sell, you can do it. And he covers so much more. Here's Tom talking about where the idea for starting a premium juice brand came from. Tom, welcome finally to the Small Business Big Marketing Show.
Very nice to be here. Thank you.
Tom, where'd the idea for Emma and Tom's come from originally, and what was happening at that time to make you think it was a good idea?
I'd been working in London, and in a previous job to my last, I'd done a lot of advisory work to Pernod Ricard, the French drinks conglomerate. That we did the combined Diageo and Ricard bid for the Seagram's wines and spirits assets. There was sort of an $8 billion transaction. So branded drinks were on the radar. And then I'd left that job and been the CFO of a cross-channel media startup in London. So I'd done a startup. I was skiing in North America, having a sort of a gap between coming back to Australia, and I was jumping in the gondola, going up to the high Alpine every morning.
This is a very exotic story, Tom. I'm loving it already.
I was drinking a green juice, and I thought, hang on, no one's doing this in Australia, and if it works, in North America, it'll probably work in Australia. So that was the extent of the market testing. And I came back and sort of put it to Emma, and she thought it was a good idea. And we spent a year, sounds like an egregious amount of time now, but we spent a year getting it organised and launching 4 super premium fruit juices.
Who is Emma?
Emma's my business partner. She's based in Melbourne. I've known her for my whole life, really. So,
and what was it? Is there small business in either of your family trees? You're doing $8 billion bids for things. Why was there an interest in getting out of that and doing something probably that back then was quite high risk?
Yeah, it was. We were probably one of the very first sort of absolutely independent, well-being sort of drinks and snack food companies. And
well, I think Spring Valley was kind of the only thing going around at the time, wasn't it? Spring Valley juices?
Yeah, which obviously had been bought by Schweppes. Look, I wanted to have a swing. Emma wanted to have some independence. My father was an entrepreneur. He started a couple of successful businesses in the mainly in the trucking industry. My grandfather was in business, so I suppose the family was commercial.
Okay, so you're on a gondola, you're sipping on a green juice, which back in the day, because what are we talking, early 2000s?
Yeah, back in those days, green juices would have been hidden at the back of the health food store.
Repulsive. No one wanted a green juice. Maybe there was a bit of wheatgrass action going around, but even then you sort of had to question that. So you have a green juice, you enjoy it, you tell Emma you enjoyed it. Then how do you all of a sudden get a national juice brand to market with no experience?
We're big on starting small. I mean, you've just got to have you've got to start.
Yes.
Our green juice contains 4 different seaweeds. Now, if you were told that, you'd just say you're crazy. That particular juice is now in probably 8,000 cafes, supermarkets, delis in Australia.
Wow.
It's a mainstream drink. And people all regard it really positively. And it's not regarded as being weird or strange. In fact, it tastes of really passion fruit and plum. That's the main flavour notes to it.
Geez, you're starting to sound like a vigneron. Is that what they are? The
I
wine
tell you,
guys?
there's a lot of that to it. I mean, fortunately we have similar palates, which helps. But back in the day, we were testing juices at one of our bottling plants, and it tasted funny. And we passed it to one of the guys there who are, dealing in this all the time. He had one sip and said, "Yep, green mango." And he was quite right, spot on. The mango was green, which is why it had a funny taint.
Yeah.
So
okay.
You do get used to, I suppose, talking in those terms. Yeah.
You both decided to put your name on the bottle. Why?
We couldn't think of a better name. We thought
that'd be the case.
It's us against the multinationals. So it is Emma and Tom up against all these big sort of behemoth companies. There's many wineries who are named after after the winemaker or the wine property or the company or the region. So that was the main incentive. Then of course it wasn't chivalry that put Emma's name first. The initials, obviously Emma and Tom, spell eat. And we thought that was quite handy to have up our sleeve.
I never picked that up. Has that been useful?
We've never used it, but it's sort of it's there. Juicy food or whatever you want to call it. There's a marketing thing there. Should the need arise?
Describe to us, Tom. You go. Okay, we're going to put a juice out there. I'm trying to figure out how that works. Do you go, we're just going to bottle up a small batch of juices and sell it to a couple of local cafes and see if it takes off? I know that I interviewed the couple who started Koyo yogurt, the coconut yogurt that's taken Australia by storm. And I know that Sandra Gosling, who's one of the founders, she just was making it with her husband, Henry, and testing it on the local yoga group. And then finally they said, this is amazing, after about 20 iterations. And then the local health food shop stocked it, and then another one stocked it, and it just sort of grew. Is that what happened to Emma and Tom's?
Yeah, we had a distributor, which we had to, we sourced after a long search, because that's one of the big challenges. They call it the last mile. You can go and,
Yes.
you and I can go and bottle off a pallet of orange juice tomorrow and ship it to Melbourne with a truck, and you pay for that, you pay for the storage. Getting it into the shop, that last mile is the hard part. So after an extensive search, one of my best mates' brother's fiance's stepfather bought a bottling plant, bought a distributor. So we convinced them with the PowerPoint presentation to take us on, and then we had samples. We ran past them until we all agreed they were good samples and the blend was right. And it was one thing doing things on the kitchen bench, and another thing doing it in commercial quantities with commercial grade fruit at a factory. So that took more time. Then we finally pressed the button to go. And of course, you've got a minimum bottling run. You can't they won't bottle less than, say, what ends up being a pallet, probably 1,000 litres. So on day one, we had 4 pallets of juice and no customers. Then a week later, we had 4 pallets of juice and some customers.
Yeah.
So we just, with our distributor and a couple of vans that we had in Melbourne, we just ran around our hit list of sites that we'd compiled and sold it in. Gave them some free stuff, convinced them to try it. Fortunately, the take-up was quite strong. There weren't many independent brands running around with novel, healthy products in those days. It's more competitive now. So we did that, and we stockpiled what we didn't sell. And after our third week, we had a pretty big stockpile. But we found a cycling event called Around the Bay in a Day, where in Melbourne, 10,000 cyclists ride to each point of the Port Phillip Bay Heads. It's about 100 k's from Melbourne. Then they hop on the car ferry and change sides and ride the other 100 k's back to Melbourne. And those cyclists that day all got a free bottle of Emma and Tom's in their lunch.
Was that a bit of a turning point?
Yeah, I mean, we got a lot of emails to the info account. That was the first time we sort of really outed ourselves, I suppose. And we've always tried to turn sort of negatives into positives. So rather than wasting a lot of juice, we used it in that way. And then obviously eventually you have enough customers and you're getting stronger sales that you sell everything you produce and you increase your production. So that's how we took off.
I remember when it did come out, Tom, and thinking, gosh, this is, through my marketing eyes, I'm going, okay, this is really interesting. It's a juice brand like no other that we'd seen. It had people's names. It was called Emma and Tom. So it was, who are these people? There was a curiosity around that. The flavour profiles were really interesting. Up until then, it was, Spring Valley was orange or, mango or whatever. But to me, and I wonder what you think of this, is that the bottle that you chose, the packaging was also very unique. And I don't imagine that would have come cheaply, because it was a very sort of bespoke, unusual, cool looking bottle. Was that done on purpose or because it was cheap?
Totally. I was intent on having a square bottle because in North America, square denoted premium. And this is, super premium fruit juice, the quality of the fruit, the way it's packaged and processed, so it's not sort of hammered by nasty and, harsh production processes, so it tastes as good as the original fruit does. We found a bottle manufacturer, and once again, we gave them a spreadsheet to show them the forecast sales, and they backed us. They didn't charge the sort of $45,000 for making new moulds. They amortised that cost over the first few years of selling bottles to us, and they supported us. So really, we didn't have a knockback, which is very fortunate because we had no background in the industry.
Incredible.
None. I'd been working really in finance out of the country for 6-7 years. Emma had been in finance, but her background had been with the Mars Corporation at Uncle Ben's making pet food.
Yes.
And there's a lot of, without being putting the wrong angle on our juice,
I get it.
There's a lot of similarities. The quality of the fish that goes into cat food determines how good the cat food is. You've got to package it and label it. There's a brand associated to it. So, and people coming out of Mars all have a pretty good pedigree. Excuse the pet food pun.
Yeah. No more dad jokes, okay?
No.
It sounds to me, and it's not uncommon, having spoken to 590 successful business owners, Tom, a relatively consistent thread is they've gone into business because they love business. They don't necessarily love the product or service they've gone into business to sell. They just want to challenge themselves to see whether they can make a success of it. It sounds like you're a bit like that. You weren't some juice fanatic back in early 2000, but you saw an opportunity to test your business muscle. That's what happened?
Yeah, quite correct. I hadn't thought of juice until sort of the penny dropped that day in North America, and I think the day the penny dropped. Another business called Nudie was just launching and giving out free samples in Bondi Beach. So it wasn't a Me Too moment. We were quite independent. They just had the jump on us. It was literally to have your own business, to have your own product, and to control something and to sort of have the achievement of building it.
Was there a moment, Tom, when you looked Emma in the eye and said, maybe this wasn't such a good idea?
Yeah, we had a few come to Jesus moments. The main one was relying upon distributors because whilst they're great, they've got a phone book full of products they're trying to sell and, you are not always top of mind, and that's to be expected. So we ended up deciding to do our own distribution and put our own vans on the road.
Wow.
Which we thought would be a major, but as it's turned out, it wasn't such a major because it gives you control. Once you have the systems in place and the software, etc., it's a fairly strategic way to go about selling product. You can control your own sales and distribution. You get the product in people's eyes more. So, for example, Woolworths approached us having seen our bars in a cafe. When you have your own vans, you start to wear a distribution cap rather than a juice brand cap. Mm-hmm. And you think to yourself, well, we've put the handbrake on. What more can we sell at this place? Which then gives rise to not just juices, because obviously there's a finite amount of juice any customer could buy, but if you have quenches and some kombucha and some protein balls, you can roll up the order to something that's more meaningful.
That's kind of interesting in itself because, Emma and Tom's is a juice brand, but you have got brand extensions into bars and protein balls and bites. Interested to know, was there some research done on that, or was it a finger in the air going, you know what, I reckon this brand can extend into food. Let's do that.
Look, it's normally finger in the air because really for us, the cost of new product development is not particularly high. Obviously, it doesn't go out the door unless we think it's fantastic, and that's our test. And we have focus groups and things.
Oh, you do?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Our first focus group a month before we launched, we served them wine before they tasted the juice and everyone felt a shot. That was a fail. So now we do it in the daytime. You obviously have your gut feel and your knowledge of the market, and we copy things from other markets sometimes, or we make sure that ours are novel. And then, frankly, if something doesn't sell as well as we would have hoped, there's no real downside. You just sort of run it out and perhaps burn some labels and move on. But to do that, you've got to have the core foundation of your main products to sort of finance those things.
With focus groups, it always fascinates me where business owners go out to seek opinions, whether it be formally through a research company and focus groups where you're sitting behind a one-way mirror watching people drink or munch on your product. How do you know how much weight to put on the opinion of others? Because there are so many other factors, aren't there? Whereas you, the business owner, may know in your heart of hearts that that particular direction is the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, I'm huge on taking advice. And I think one of our downfalls early on was we didn't take advice, and it wasn't through arrogance, but we were both married, starting families, having babies, and you just think you got your direction sorted. But of course, the problem is you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
That's always a concern. And we put together an advisory board, and one of the members of the advisory board was very negative against our raw fruit and nut bars. They didn't like them. Uh-huh. And we took that advice and ignored it, and they ended up being one of the best-selling items in Woolworths health food. But having said that, we do take a lot of advice. That was one that we just chose to bypass, and people have their own views, of course. And not everyone's going to like everything, which is why we have 7 or so flavoured juices. So if you don't like mango, don't have the Karmarama, have the Extreme C.
What's your view on that? Because you have got a lot of flavours. You've got a lot of flavoured juices and kombucha and lightly sparkling beverages and all those kind of things. I saw some market research once that basically, have you ever heard that case study of the jam brand at the end of the supermarket aisle where they started with 20 flavours and had these pole positions at the end of supermarket aisles and wondered why they weren't selling anything. And they slowly reduced the varieties of flavours until it got down, the optimal number was 3 where they made the most sales. And what that showed was that as humans, we hate choice. You seem to have a fair amount of choice, a growing amount of choice.
We've reduced our choice through COVID by about 30%. I have the view that we have fridges in shop, so obviously a fridge full of green power is not a very compelling option. So you want to give people the choice of variety of different drinks. And I look at our fridge and say, well, if this was a fridge by one of the large multinationals with sort of sugar-filled drinks, ours is the healthy alternative, and give people that alternative. Mm-hmm. There's different consumption cues, and we try and cater to those. But having said that, we have cut back our range by a good 30%. Which has made life obviously much easier. It's reduced our inventory levels, and it makes it easy for the van drivers to sort through and sell product. And we haven't noticed a deterioration of sales.
There you go. Just proved the jam case study correct.
Yep, spot on.
Choice could be evil.
Look, I agree. We sponsor things like running events, and if you've got 6 different bar flavours on tables at the end of the run, people stand there for hours staring at what's their choice. If you have 2, they just grab one and move on.
Yeah, that's right. How do you make sponsorship work? I see so many businesses go into sponsorship and, get the branding on the local sports ground and an ad in the program, which to me doesn't really smell of huge returns. Do you have a sort of approach to sponsorship to ensure that you do see good return?
Look, we're not doing a lot of it these days. We did it in the early days to sort of, launch the brand, and I think it was fruitful then. But no, we're now trying to do things that have more of a national appeal rather than that particularly local appeal.
What haven't you done that you should have done?
We've been very slow to excel ourselves in mainstream grocery. We've been doing great sales in Coles Local and Woolworths Metro, and we're just now working on achieving better sales in the sort of larger take-home packs in the mainstream sort of juice aisle there.
What does that do for a brand when you go? I can understand it from the business owner's point of view, where you want to be in the biggest outlets in the country. You want to be in Coles. You want to be in Woolworths. But Emma & Tom's is quite a bespoke brand. It has that boutique nature about it. Are you concerned that as you completely flood the supermarket aisles that sort of bespoke part of the brand will disappear?
No, not at all. We're in a variety of channels. We're in schools, hospitals. We're in workplaces. We're available online. Being in Coles and Woolworths, for example, in Australia and IGAs, gives you the opportunity to sell your product to 8 million households. Yeah. Why wouldn't you do that? You see restaurants decorating their walls and things with things like San Pellegrino, which is stacked 10 high at Dan Murphy and the supermarket. So I don't believe that putting yourself into supermarkets and being available excludes you from having a certain market position or also being saleable in smart cafes and delis.
Yeah, fair enough. You have built a strong brand. Branding is an unusual term, Tom, especially when you're talking amongst small business owners. What's your view on branding? Do you have a favourite definition of branding, and what's your view on creating a strong brand?
I think brand really determines on how it makes you feel. It's yes. Emotion.
Yes.
And as you know, no one ever purchased a car using rational thought. It's emotion. So in our case,
they justify the purchase on a rational thought, but they don't buy on rational thought.
No. So in our case, it's, I want, for example, someone like me to be buying Emma & Tom's and saying either I feel good about my decision because it's a healthy, natural beverage or snack, or I feel good about buying it for my daughters because it's healthy and it's good for them. So now we're in sort of, 8,000 sites and all the supermarkets, and people are obviously walking past a bottle or a bar, X times a week. I want them to feel like they've got permission to purchase it and to feel good about it. And that's what the brand meant.
Anything else you haven't done that you should have done?
We have a chairman, so back to advice. We hired a non-executive director about a year ago, and he's been a great injection of opinion and mentoring in the business, which has been exceptionally helpful. So we've got through COVID, which was a challenge.
No doubt.
As it has been to many, many people. And
well, I think you said to me in a pre-chat last week, in March 2020, 3,000 cafes close in 1 week. Every one of them is a distribution partner for you. How did you manage that? Outside of the poor cafes themselves, but what do you do?
We contracted as quickly as we could. We supported the ones who had closed, who were left with stock, to the extent that we were able to. And we sort of, I suppose, pulled our horns in and hunkered down and reduced costs, reduced production, focused on the areas that were going well, focused on what we could control. And we have found that after every lockdown, fortunately for us, we've come back fairly strongly because there's a demand for the product. Like all businesses, we found sales reduced in the CBDs and probably increased in the suburbs. But having said all that, we haven't. There's people out there in parts of Australia who have had to deal now with horrendous weather and floods and everything else. So frankly, I think we're
pretty good shape.
We're fortunate, and I think others need more attention and assistance.
Tom, you operate in a category that spends a hell of a lot of money on advertising. Certainly back in the day, I remember Spring Valley, they were everywhere. In fact, just ironically, I worked at Clemenger's advertising, and it was Spring Valley was one of the clients of Clemenger's. So I saw the amount of advertising they were doing. That's early 2000s, but it's still a category that spends a hell of a lot of dough. And you got the likes of Coca-Cola, Amatil, distributing their juices and things. How do you compete at that marketing level? Obviously, you're not going off buying expensive are you buying expensive TV schedules, radio schedules outdoor, or how are you building awareness?
No, we're not. And do you ask about things that we should have done better? We've never, ever told our consumers what to think of us. So whatever you think of us, the brand,
right,
you've made your own mind up, which is probably that's an error, not to control the conversation.
Uh-huh.
We've always focused on being available in really good outlets.
Mm-hmm.
So there's presence in store. There's obviously the bottle, there's the vans running around the streets. Now the vans, if you look at a branded bus shelter that's got two sides, our vans have four sides.
Mm-hmm.
If you cost up what 30-odd vans would be costing you in terms of 30 bus shelters for a year, it's sort of $4 or $5 million of ad spend per annum just on that.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have obviously, different types of marketing, PR. So we've got by, we've managed to fend off new ranges that have been pushed out by very large competitors on more than one occasion. And just by the quality of the product and our efforts of getting it in store, having our own distribution, obviously, even if a store changes hands or it closes down and we lose our distribution there, we can go next door and put it in there. We have very low customer turnover. Mm-hmm. Given the industry turns over fairly rapidly on a per annum basis, we've been very sticky.
Did you ever give any consideration? Because as you launched early 2000s, and over that time, the last sort of 20 years, that whole juice thing's gone bananas, whether it be some new fandangled juice diet or whether it be some, juice bars opening up everywhere. We've got cold pressed juices these days. We've got things being served in funky jam jars, and it's all, it really has exploded. Have you ever been tempted to maybe open up at a retail level, at a bricks and mortar level, like a Janine Ellis has done with Boost Juice?
Look, we don't look at Boost as being a competitor. That's sort of always I look at that as being a form of entertainment, and they've done a fantastic job. We're not retailers; we're wholesalers. We've just focused on what we're doing. And someone once said to me, in the world of perfume, at the top of the tree you've got Chanel No. 5, and next year, Kylie and Beyonce and everyone else, Rihanna, puts out their own perfumes, and at the end of the year, you've got Chanel No. 5. Mm-hmm. So we just focus on, I suppose, being the best we can be and maintaining that quality. And I think doing that also is very strong from a brand point of view.
I think that's really interesting because so often it's very easy to be distracted by a new bright, shiny object in the world of business, certainly in the world of marketing. There's for example, always a new social media channel popping up. Oh, should I be on that? Keep your eye on the game, the original game that you set out to be good at. And clearly that's what you've done. That's what Chanel No. 5. There's always going to be competition. There's always going to be something popping up to threaten the status quo. Your view is you keep your eye on your prize, yeah?
Yeah, there was that great phase of cold pressed juices.
Yes.
And of course, they all launch and then they start giving out free stock to shops, and the shops think, well, it's free, I'll take it. And then our sales dip for a little while, and all of a sudden people get sick of cold pressing their juice every morning before going out and selling it. And so they sort of fade away, and we're still there. We get the phone call saying, can you come and perhaps sell some juice, please?
You have got great distribution, yet you still have an online store at emmaandtoms.com.au. Why?
Once again, I think you want to make it as easy as possible for people to get your product.
Does that not piss off the retailers?
No, because we sell it at full retail.
At full retail. Probably the most expensive place you could buy an Emma and Tom's juice is online?
No, but we'd be at parity there with every other outlet that sells us. And frankly, there's distribution costs and everything else, so you've got to do it. And I suppose the online offer provides convenience.
What percentage of the Emma and Tom's business is the online store?
Minuscule.
Yeah.
It should be a lot higher. I've got ambitions to grow that, particularly in terms of selling sort of cooler bags, pre-packed cooler bags full of juice, like a hamper offering.
Yep. The poet Mike Tyson, Tom, says that everyone's got a plan until you're punched in the face. What do you love about that quote?
I think it's spot on. I mean, As you know, form is predictable. If you look at Champion Data and the guys that do the AFL stats and the rugby league stats, they've got stats on every single player and every single angle and type of kick. So the game is ultimately predictable. But then you get these people who are sort of out of the left corner, your Dangerfields or your Riolis, who do stuff that's not predictable, and that's what turns the game. So I think you've got to be thinking out of the box to predict what others don't predict, to then be ahead of the market.
What does that look like inside Emma and Tom's business? Do you, because the old cliche, you know, we're not finding enough time to work on the business because we're always working in the business. I get the feeling you and Emma, your board, your trusted advisors get together on a fairly regular basis and ask some big questions. Do you? And what does that look like?
Yeah, and that's one of the agenda items for our meeting tomorrow in Melbourne.
Oh, there you go.
The last few years we've been pretty much just in sort of, survival mode thanks to COVID. There hasn't been as much innovation, but now we're coming out. That's definitely absolutely on the table and high on the agenda.
What's the question?
My view is what's going to move the market, what's going to really move the dial. Punching out one more flavoured milk doesn't do a thing to the business really. Mm-hmm. What's the next category that's going to really move and to be ahead of the curve on that front? That's my question.
And how do you, where's your knowledge around that? Are you going overseas and doing these, go-sees? Are you just keeping an eye on the markets overseas online? How do you get this knowledge?
You're talking to people like, for example, the equivalents of the CSROs and seeing what they're working on. You are looking abroad. Obviously, right now, things like nootropics are gaining popularity. So,
what are they?
Nootropics are basically they're the opposite of, say, a Red Bull. Where Red Bull gives you energy, they say, because it's full of sugar and caffeine. Nootropics are more on mind calming and alertness, etc. So it's more of a mental thing, and I would argue there's more people want, I suppose, anti-anxiety than to have a body pumped up full of sugar and caffeine.
Okay, that's really interesting. Because Red Bull have done a very good job at, Red Bull gives you wings, and it's sugar and caffeine that gives you wings, or the guarana or whatever it is in there. So are you saying there is a movement towards beverages that will address specific mental health issues, whether it be anxiety or tiredness or depression or
that's right.
Any of these things? Is that where we're going?
Or hair, skin and nails, collagen.
So I think that's awesome, but I also, as a consumer, I'm like, really? Convince me. You say you don't convince people, you let people make their own decisions up around Emma and Tom's, but that kind of stuff surely is going to require some serious education for people to, it's like these herbal teas. Really? If I have a chamomile, is it really going to put me to sleep? I sort of go, it seems nonsense to me, but look, I like the premise.
I'll put it to you. For example, prebiotics, okay?
Yeah.
Now, that is proven that prebiotics basically are the fibres that your gut biome enjoy to live on. So having a diet which is high in prebiotics, which we now add to some of our juices, directly aids your gut biome and your digestion, and you do feel better. And as you know, there's the whole thing about gut instinct and how really gut health then is a direct line to mental well-being and mental health because you feel better. So that's not sort of doing the chamomile tea or the lavender tea thing, which you could possibly scoff at. And these things are satisfying as well, mind you. I believe there's a very large movement and will be bigger towards prebiotics. Now, obviously, brands have put out probiotics, which is the live living bacteria. I've got 2 daughters. I'd rather feed them a healthy array of good foods rather than not doing that and then pumping them full of pills full of bacteria.
Does this then, what was the phrase you used? Nootropics? Is that the...
Nootropics, yes.
Nootropics. Does that mean it could open up the possibility of Emma and Tom's having fridges in chemist warehouses around Australia?
Yeah, it would. It would. And there's many areas there which we can, we haven't, I suppose, been active in that I feel are obviously could be valuable markets to us. I mean, look at in the States now. One thing that's legal that might take some years in Australia is CBD oil.
Yeah.
Now, that's legal in the States. You can put that in low quantities into drinks, where in Australia you can do it, I believe it's only in chemists in the form of gummies.
I think there's CBD and THC. The CBD is legal. I don't know, actually.
No,
I mean, there are chemists.
Hemp's
now.
legal in Australia, but CBD is not.
Okay. Wow, there's a couple of interesting areas that you can take this.
Yeah.
Because you do have you personally have an interest in mental health, don't you? We had a chat last week, and that whole question around people asking, "How are you?" In business we often just it's all business, and yet we're all humans, and we should be asking people each other,
look,
"How
absolutely.
are we?"
I am big on that, and I just think the people who I see who operate the best, and I'm fortunate to have a couple of them around me, do have very strong soft skills. And it's not all about crunching people. It's about understanding where they are in the process and how they're faring. It's not all about the bottom line, dollar.
You're a very big believer in soft skills. Give us an example of where that's played out in the Emma and Tom's business.
Really, I think it's more in the people we've put around us, which has helped us an awful lot, and to recognise that those are the people you want on your team.
Mm-hmm.
A big thing, probably it's fading these days. You'd hope on the sort of the cigar chomping Wall Street banker type take no prisoners. Once again, the better advisors and the better people around you are aware of their environment and get it. Unless you know your environment, you're going to have a hard time, I suppose, crafting a product or a service to fit it.
Yeah. What do you see other business owners do, not just in your category, but just generally? I imagine you're one of those guys who looks at businesses from afar as you're walking down a street or, in a meeting. What do other business owners do that they're just getting wrong, or that it really annoys you to see?
Well, we see a lot of flow, that's for sure. I don't know if people get it wrong, but I think...
A lot of flow? What do you mean flow?
Well, yeah, in different concepts coming past. I have a lot of people reaching out to me, which I enjoy. I just think you need to be realistic as to sort of the opportunity, and there's a lot of businesses that are sort of turning over $4 or $5 million, and that's a very hard place to be.
Mm-hmm.
So that, and I suppose having the available cash to make sure you see yourself through to the other side. There's no point being half funded.
I saw somewhere where you said if you were given $1 million right now, you'd put every bit of it back into the business. Is that your sort of philosophy? All available money's reinvested back into the business?
Look, I mean, organic growth's one thing, but if you can get an acceleration by a capital injection, it does change the landscape, absolutely, and de-risk.
You had a few people knocking on the door wanting to buy Emma and Tom's?
Yeah, being a public brand, you do get a lot of, quite a lot of attention in that sphere. Yeah, you do.
Mm-hmm.
We've hung on, so we still own it pretty much half and half.
And your response to them is thanks, but no thanks, or just make the check a bit bigger if you could.
I just see a lot of opportunity right now that we can enjoy the upside on.
Mm-hmm.
So we haven't finished what we're doing yet.
Yeah, that's great. Do you have this sense of is there a sense of, I just want to do so much and I can't because we've got to do it in a measured approach? You seem a pretty calm kind of fellow, but you also seem one full of ideas. How do you sort of balance that?
I think you've just got to be careful that you don't, once again, back to keeping the main thing. You can't do everything all at once. And there's a phrase in this business called launching and leaving. You can't just launch a product and leave it. If you launch something, you need to actually do it with conviction and follow it through so it sticks. Launching
and leaving mean we just put it out there, we've done all we can, now it's got to, live and die by its own sword. Is that
which you don't do. I mean, obviously, I look at a bottle of Green Power every day of the week, but that doesn't mean that every Australian knows what it is. I would be amazed if 1 in 20 knew what Green Power was.
What is it?
That's our hero first green product. There you go. You see?
What's your favourite flavour?
I actually am pretty big on the Green Power, to be honest.
Yeah.
We do a pineapple crush, which is sort of echoes of your childhood and those sort of golden circle cans, but it's a much better taste than that. So I love those.
Uh-huh.
And our lightly sparkling sort of fruit juice is a pretty clean drink. So I took some to a friend's house on Sunday for lunch and had a Lisbon lemon. It was fantastic.
Well, there is an absolute movement to. You are a non-alcoholic beverage, but I had Mark Livings on the show a couple of years ago. He started Liars, which is that non-alcoholic spirits brand that's gone absolutely bananas. So that whole space seems to be, even if you go into a Dan Murphy's these days, there's there's large spaces allocated to non-alcoholic beverages. And again, are you in Dan's?
No, we're not. I've just noticed that it was announced last week that Dan's are opening a dedicated non-alcohol bar and store in Melbourne.
Really?
So, we've obviously been at the forefront of a couple of fads very early on. We've always been pretty much plant-based, and we've always been non-alc. So there's definitely a pivot there.
A bar. Dan Murphy starting a non-alcoholic. Yeah, there you go.
It's either a bar or a dedicated retail outlet, but it is all non-alc.
I know there are non-alcoholic bottle shops popping up around the place, so maybe that's just another one of them. Tom, great story. I'm very excited to have spoken to the Tom and Emma and Tom's, because it sort of is. It's been it's a brand that's been part of my growing up. It's always been there out on the periphery, and it's a pleasure to have spoken to you. And
thank you.
For those who want to find out more, emmaandtoms.com.au is the website. Go and buy some. Thanks a lot, Tom.
Thanks, Tim, very much.
Hey, there you go, team. Emma and Tom's Tom Griffith. What a good guy, and a lot to share. You'll find links to any resources mentioned in that episode over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com/591. But importantly, let me know what your big takeaway was from that chat by calling the Small Business Big Marketing hotline right now if you want to, 0480 015 150, just like listener Rachel did.
Hello, my name's Rachel and I'm the owner of a business called Baby and Mama Gifts. I do gift hampers for new mothers and their babies, and I sell online as well as in my local area. I love your podcast. I've loved listening to a lot of episodes. I heard about it from a friend who's a fellow small business owner. Some of the things that I've loved learning about SEO. I didn't know anything about SEO before listening to your podcast, and then heard about it from a few other places as well, and I've been able to implement some of the tips that you've had on your show. I'm also implementing one of the other tips at the moment. I'm going around at the moment and delivering some free samples of my products, which I got the idea from one of your episodes as well. And of course, with the samples, I'm giving out a little discount code and a business card with my website on there. I've really loved listening, and I think every episode has at least one thing that I can use myself, whether it's something to put on my website or something to put with my product or a different way of interacting with customers. There's a lot of information in every single episode. I'm going back through now. I've listened to all the recent ones. I'm going back through now and listening to older episodes. So I'm hoping that over the next few months I can listen to all of the episodes and learn a lot from them, because every single time I get something out of it. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much, Rachel, for taking the time to make that call. And good on you for going back through old episodes. You are a cretin for punishment, clearly. And well done on picking up learnings from past episodes and implementing them, because you've heard me say it before, most likely, that's where the magic happens. Good on you for using Harry Sanders with your SEO. Good on you using for Greg Merrilies for your website design. That's such a great way to start a business, on the front foot, if you can afford it. And these guys aren't expensive, by the way, but using the best you can to get that beautiful business off the ground, so important. The free sampling idea, Rachel, I love it. Careful on the discount code offer. Ran a couple of webinars last week with John Dwyer about how to take your customers' eyes off the price. And you do want to do that. Discounting puts the eyes on the price. You want them to get their eyes off the price. And I would encourage you to go back and listen to the episode with John Dwyer about incentive-based marketing. It's an absolute cracker. And the two subsequent webinars I ran with him were rippers. Hey, everyone else, give us a buzz, 0480 015 150. Let us know how you're going. Next week, we catch up with Stefan van Lint, who owns Quizmeister, one of the biggest pub trivia companies in Australia. He's all about challenging the status quo of his category, and I love it. Basically, whatever his category does, from a marketing point of view, an HR point of view, a production point of view, whatever it may be, he flips it 180 degrees and does it differently, and to great outcomes as well. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button. That helps me so much in my rankings. And leave a review on your favourite podcast app. Even better. Well, actually, both combined. That's a podcaster's wet dream. Where you'll find also 590 more chats with successful business owners on your favourite podcast app. If you're ready to create some helpful marketing, grab a copy of my book, The Boomerang Effect, over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. May your marketing be the absolute best marketing. Bye for now.